Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller, my co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network, and it's Tuesday, and I need a beer, man. I need some beers. Auto Club is now officially done for the last race at that 2-mile racetrack, unfortunately, because holy shit, that was some good racing that we saw on Sunday. Ross Chastain wins stage 1 and 2, leads 91 laps, but it's Kyle Busch in victory lane for Richard Childress Racing already to start out the year. Second race of the year, Kyle Busch is back in victory lane. One of the best drivers in the series over the last 10, 15 years goes to a new team and immediately gets a win at Auto Club. Jeff Gluck's poll, 90% said yes, that was a good race. We saw some amazing racing in this event. We also saw a cat on the track. We also saw some issues with the new restart rule. You know, did Logano brake check anybody? And Logano said he didn't, but you know, we definitely saw a pile up there on a restart. We saw some comers and goers throughout the race, but overall, Chevy looked good. And I know we've talked a lot about Ford to start this year. But Chevy, 1, 2, 3, 4, Chevy leading most of the laps. Trackhouse, once again, they were one of those teams that I said at the beginning of the year, I don't know if they're going to be able to repeat. Well, first real race of the season, I'm going to call it, and they come out and both of them, both Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez, look like they could win this race. And of course, Kyle Busch, another guy, I'm already eating my words from our preseason podcast. I said Kyle Busch went down a tier in the performance category with his move to Richard Childress Racing. He's already got a win. And you know what? That was even after overcoming a penalty. I think he could have led even more in that race and showed more domination if he wouldn't have got that penalty. But Nick, I know you enjoyed this race, but what was your favorite thing about this Auto Club race this past weekend?
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about the race was just the fact that even several laps into a run, like I'm not talking just the first 5 or 10 laps, but you could make passes. And that's, again, because of the tire wear. We had comers and goers, right? We had guys moving to the front, and then after a little while, they'd fall back to the back. I know a couple examples of that would be like William Byron. He was very often like moving forward, and then all of a sudden he'd just fall back at the end of the run. So definitely some Chevys. Eric Jones was another example. He'd move forward up to about 13, 14, and then fall all the way back to 18, 19 in the middle of a run, towards the back half of a run. And so it was nice to see that tire management still mattered. And, it was a cold day at Auto Club Speedway. It didn't get above like about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so that prevented extra tire wear. It could have been even more wear, but at the same time, even on a 50-degree day, still we're able to just have multiple lanes of racing. It did become a little one lane there towards the end, especially over the long run. But that's just kind of how it happens when teams have all race to work on their cars. They get better and better, and cars become a little more equal. Other than obviously Kyle Busch, who was just super dominant at the end there. But hats off to Rowdy for that win. His first non-super speedway race for Richard Childress Racing, points paying race, because super speedways are so random. But so he's 1 for 1 outside of the super speedways, which I don't think I was expecting. Now, I certainly know that obviously Tyler Reddick had a great car at this track last year. I just wasn't sure if the same would continue or not. And one thing that's pretty important to pay attention to, Denny Hamlin, he feeds us a lot of good information. I know Ryan from My Fantasy Race tweeted out that Denny Hamlin said those RCR cars may have the best engines this year. And you know who else has those RCR engines? Team Trackhouse.
Mm-hmm. And, he made a note, or Hamlin made a note to say that, RCR might have the best engines even over Hendrick, which, we saw Chase Elliott finish second. He started in the rear. You and I were on that bet. You posted it on Action Network, the 11-1 of drivers starting 31st or worse. So that kind of sucked on Sunday, not being able to hit that. But, Chase Elliott did look strong there at the end, and that's kind of what he does, is just kind of, moves himself up throughout the race, gets there. I kind of questioned, they stayed out a couple, I think it was 2 laps after Chastain and Kyle Busch pitted, and I was thinking, in my head at the time, I'm like, Gustafson made another Gustafson call and screwed over Chase Elliott. But, he did end up finishing second. It was solid. Kevin Harvick with the top 5 finish. Brad Keselowski was 7th. A lot of the same guys that perform really well at Auto Club, just they're good there. Austin Dillon finished 9th. The only, a few of the guys that I would say disappointed. One would be Joey Logano. He was running 3rd all day, and then I don't know what that team did to that car on the last run, but it went to absolute junk. And the same with Byron. He, like you said, he was awesome on restarts, and then about a quarter of the way through the run, he would just fall apart. But looking further down in this running order, Corey LaJoie had a top 10 stage finish. He finished 14th. I mean, that is an amazing run for that team. Harrison Burton finished 15th. Ty Gibbs 16th. I don't know how much we learned from this weekend, but it seems to me like everything that we got so accustomed to last year with this car is just going to happen over again this year. And whether that translates to Las Vegas and this upcoming weekend's race and what we learned from Auto Club, because you got to remember, we didn't have any practice or qualifying either on this race. So I think a lot of people are overlooking that, and that's actually going to be one thing that I talk about in our Wine About It segment. So we're going to go ahead and just get right into that real quick. So this is Wine About It, presented by Luvabella Winery. I know Nick finally got his shipment of wines. He's got that Purple Rain. He's going to try it. This is my favorite wine from Luvabella. I love this wine. And yes, let's see. Let's hear what you think of this wine.
Yeah,
get a professional taste test here.
I have my first taste of Luvabella wines I'm going to have right now. And pardon the ASMR mouth sounds, but I'm going to drink it at the microphone. Now that is good. It's a little sweet, but it's a smooth sweet. So it's not like too sharp or too acidic or anything like that. It's really good, smooth, slightly sweet wine, red wine. I think it would be great in a sangria as well. So I like it. I definitely think this is a wine that I could just sit down and just chill with on a nice, even though red wine, even though it's red, it's not like a red. It's not like a deep red. So it's a nice red wine that I could have a little sweet that could be either as part of a sangria, or I could just chill with it even on a warm day, because, you think warmer days, you want the nice colder white wines. But and then in the winter, you want to get warm and cozy, you get those big bolder red wines. But this one you could have year round for sure. So I really like it, and I can see why it's one of their flagship wines at LB Winery. How do you get that in? I mean, by the way, this hat that they gave me, it says LB on it. So,
that's so
my
perfect.
dog's name is so LB. Perfect. So it turned out to be the perfect sponsor.
Now that we are recording video for podcasts, people can actually see it on YouTube. You can see us actually talking and our what we're doing when we're actually talking and recording this podcast. But what is your Wine About It topic this week? So I think you have a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think people are really trying to dive into comparisons for Las Vegas, and I think it's getting a little out of hand. I think, and it's totally fine. We all have our own ways of analyzing things, but let's be real. The two most similar tracks, period, in the whole NASCAR circuit, absolutely the two most similar tracks are Kansas and Las Vegas. When I run my correlations, those two are literally number 1 and 2 correlated to each other compared to any other pair of tracks. So don't overthink it. Don't sit here and think, okay, well, we can totally use Texas, or we can totally use Michigan, or whatever. I think this is one of those things where, yeah, we can factor them in a little bit, but do not weigh them equally to pass Las Vegas races or to pass Kansas races. Do not weigh them equally. Don't take averages of those. You got to take a weighted average where you're weighing Las Vegas and Kansas so much more. Then also, we need to consider tire combinations. So if we look at the races that were on this tire combination, there's only been 4 races. There was Kansas 2 last year, There was Texas, so, you can give some weight to that just because it was on the same tire combination. There was Vegas 2, and then there was Auto Club of this year. So we've only had 4 races on this tire combination. If you want to add in the right side tires, there were 2 other races that had the same right side but not the same left side. That would be Pocono of last year and Homestead of last year, but they both had different left sides. So you can factor those in maybe slightly bit. But then even when there was a different tire combination, even Kansas 1 or Vegas 1 last year, you still got to factor those in. I mean, it's essentially the same tracks, right? So when I'm weighing things, and I use something called similarity scores, Vegas obviously is number 1. Kansas is number 2 by a very large amount versus number 3. And number 3 actually is Charlotte, and then Michigan, and then Texas. And then because of Auto Club's same tire this year, Auto Club this year factors in more than past Auto Clubs as well. So just kind of when I'm looking at similarity scores, you really have to mostly give credit to Vegas and Kansas. That's the bulk of things. So please do not overweigh Texas last year. Please do not overweigh Charlotte of last year. Please do not overweigh Auto Club of this year, because as we saw last year, Auto Club versus Vegas, they were back-to-back races last year, and there were 2 totally different sets of results, right? Like, Auto Club, it was Tyler Reddick dominated, and, William Byron was really good, and there were a couple other, Eric Jones, for example, a couple other really good cars, and the JGR guys were terrible, and then all of a sudden, at Vegas, the very next race, JGR dominated. Even though Truex didn't actually dominate a ton of laps, he and Kyle Busch definitely had the 2 best cars, and I would say Denny Hamlin was right up there as well until he had his problems. But Hamlin was flying through the field at the start of the race until he encountered his problems. Christopher Bell had a very good car, and he also had problems. So don't overweigh Auto Club when looking at Vegas this weekend. Don't overweigh Texas. Don't overweigh Charlotte. Don't overweigh Michigan. Mostly Kansas, and of course, Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's number 2. That's and it's all recency bias, and I'm going to go back to the fact that we did not get practice or qualifying last week at Fontana, and I understand it's easy to, and this is my whine about it idea or whatever I'm talking about. I can't think right now. It's been a week. But anyway, so a lot of people, it's easy to say, these cars were really good at Fontana. You have to remember that no practice, no qualifying. Those cars unloaded, got on the track with the setup that they had. We saw Chase Briscoe was absolute garbage. Chase Briscoe was getting outran by Cody Ware and BJ McLeod, legitimately outran by the 2 biggest shitbox cars in that entire race. So I understand, I've seen people this week talk, is Kyle Busch going to win 10 races this year? What are you talking about? We have 1 race. We have a 1 race sample size. Yes, he won it. Yes, there's this Denny Hamlin saying that RCR has an engine advantage. We have 1 race. Don't sit here and start overreacting, start overbetting based on we don't know anything right now. We are still in the very beginning stages of the season. So my biggest thing this week when it comes to whining about it is just people overreacting. And it kind of goes with Greg Mathern's question that he sent to us on Twitter was, what do you think is the biggest overreaction people are going to make in response to Auto Club? And I think they're just going to overweigh it can go either way. Like Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez had 2 of the best cars at Auto Club. Does that mean they're going to have 2 of the best cars at Las Vegas? It could. They could have very good cars at Las Vegas. They could also have just 10th place cars at Las Vegas. Is Chase Briscoe going to be a 34th place car at Las Vegas? I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be that awful, but it's certainly possible. So I think the biggest overreaction is just people putting trust in a race that, you know what? The crew chiefs were guessing on setups for that race, and it's not like they have time to really dial that car in during the race and during those pit stops. So I think practice this week, qualifying this week is going to be very telling on what these teams are going to be able to do. So I think this opens the door for, contrarian DFS players and also bettors that go against, everyone's now betting Kyle Busch. He's the favorite this week, along with Kyle Larson, which Kyle Larson had a great car at Fontana. I will say that, even after his electrical issues. Like, I think he had one of the best cars in that race, even after the electrical issues. But just the overreactions in general are just something to keep in mind, especially if you're a DFS player this week, because a lot of people are going to be on Chastain this week. A ton of people are going to be on Kyle Busch this week. I mean, and you look at his Las Vegas record, his last 4 races here, third, fourth, third. This is his home track. He's really good here. Yes, he's probably going to have a very good car, but don't forget that people overreact, and that is your chance within, I'm specifically talking about DFS here, to kind of get a leverage on the field.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think as far as overreactions, and to answer Greg's question, this is going to be an interesting one because I agree. I don't think we should overreact. But the problem is when I look at Kansas and Vegas, especially on this tire combination, the guys that really stand out are Chastain, Tyler Reddick in that 8 car, which is now Kyle Busch, and we saw how that 8 car did from last year to this year at Auto Club. And then guys that don't stand out would be somebody like a Ryan Blaney. And, well, Blaney, he wrecked out. Now, he had an amazing rocket ship at Auto Club, and I don't think people give him enough credit for that. But when I'm looking at lap-by-lap data, he was one of the fastest until he wrecked out. Arguably the fastest until he wrecked out, especially considering track position. So it's interesting because the spots I would think people could overreact actually seem to be correlating really well with past Las Vegas and Kansas. So that's pretty tough. But I do think if people are overreacting to, let's say, JGR not being as good at Auto Club. Well, we saw that last year. I mean, take Bubba Wallace, for example. I know JGR, I could say Toyota. Bubba Wallace, once again, had overheating issues. And when he asked his crew chief whether it was the same as last year, the response was kind of yes, kind of no. So, like, how do you have the same overheating issues? Kind of yes, 2 years in a row. But guess what? They didn't have those issues at Las Vegas in the very next race. So I don't want to overreact to a Bubba Wallace overheating issue. I think he's a very interesting play. And when you look at him, he's obviously he doesn't stand out maybe necessarily in terms of driver rating because he retaliated on Kyle Larson at Vegas. But he was running right up near the front before that happened. So when you look at something like a flags metric, which is I like to do because then it only takes into things in account when the car was healthy, so before he wrecked. Bubba Wallace stands out really well between Kansas and Las Vegas, so let's not overreact negatively towards him because of Auto Club. And actually prior to the overheating issues, he was kind of moving up through the field as well. So I actually don't think there's too many overreaction spots, but I certainly don't want to overreact. So it's just a question of where is that overreaction going to come from. And I think, weirdly enough, just the way Auto Club worked out, it kind of happened to work out in the way that I don't think there'll be too many overreactions. Maybe Byron, people will be overreacting to his rough performance, I guess. But overall, I don't think there's too many overreaction spots. Like William Byron, he was 15th in flags, my metric that I've created, that if you've been following along for a while, you'll understand. But just in terms of lap-by-lap data when his car was healthy, and I did remove, after Byron had his incident, I removed all that data. He just comes in 15th in speed, essentially, in field-level adjusted speed. And that could be an overreaction spot, would be William Byron, because he was pretty solid here. I mean, he was one of the best cars at the first Vegas race last year. Remember, we had, I have to always remind us, but we had that stage 1 Byron bet that we lost on like the last lap. He got passed or something. So that was frustrating. I think it was by Bowman. But
it was. It was.
Byron's good at these tracks, so don't overreact to Byron at Auto Club. Now, I know he was good at Auto Club last year, but I wouldn't overreact here to William Byron. So I guess if there's an overreaction spot, maybe it's William Byron.
Okay. Yeah. It's just, when we have a week like that, it's so difficult for me to be sided on certain things and decided on certain things, because it's just too early in the season, and I'm going to keep harping on that. One more thing I want to harp on.
Real quick, also don't overreact to Chase Elliott. I totally forgot about that. He finished second, but he was not a second-place car most of that race.
No.
Very end of the race he was, but part of it was track position. But do not overreact to Chase Elliott's finish there because he hasn't been great at Kansas or Vegas recently.
And like I said, that's his typical type of race. Unless he starts up front, he doesn't dominate. So he'll just slowly move his way up, and then just be there at the end. And, if he had a better crew chief, he'd probably win more races, but that's just not the case. One more thing I want to harp on here. Martin Truex Jr. and just the Reese, I think it's Reesers. Is that the sponsor that he had last week?
Something like that,
yeah. Can they stop sponsoring NASCAR drivers? Because going back to the days of Matt Kenseth, I've done the analysis of Truex in the Auto Club, Auto Owners paint scheme. I want to do analysis of when Reesers is on a car because I can guarantee that the results are significantly worse for that driver than average. Every single time. Truex ended up finishing 11th. He had a very good car in that race. I hit him with a live bet, and as soon as that happened, his tire fell off. But I even remember back to the days of Matt Kenseth when he would run that paint scheme. He would just always seem to be worse than normal. So my request is for Reesers to please stop sponsoring NASCAR. Please.
I agree. One other thing I wanted to mention that I was very happy about. Now, I had a pretty bad betting day, but I'm still also very happy with my bets. I mean, when you get 31, when you get those drivers we got at 11-1 combined, amazing. And when you get Larson, Truex, and Hamlin at plus 7 other drivers, 5 of whom had, at least had a 1% chance of winning the race per both mine and Jim's models. I think those were good bets. But the one thing I will say I was very happy about. After I won Daytona, or not won Daytona, after I had a profitable day at Daytona, people were ragging on me for that, right? Remember that? And then I had an abysmal day this past weekend, as far as results go, and nobody gave me shit for it. So it was why? There's another whine about it there. Why do you whine when I win, but don't whine when I just get absolutely destroyed? And I feel very happy with my bets. I think the only one probably that I'm not happy with is Tyler Reddick. I bet him 15-1. I just think
he was not that good.
He was junk even before he got junked. So I think that was the only bet I wasn't happy with. But overall, I think I was happy with every other bet. And, that's the thing. You need to analyze. Regardless, you need to be independent of your results. Instead of being results-oriented, you need to be process-oriented. And I feel like all but one of the bets I made were good. And then on the flip side with Daytona, all the bets I made, I think were pretty good, except I think one, like I said there also. So it's a matter of you have to be critical with your own process. And I will 100% admit when I make bad bets, and I'll 100% admit when I think I make good bets, even if I had a losing day. And I think so far this year, my process has been pretty good, not great. I think I probably bet a little too much on this race for it being too early in the year, and I was trying not to. So I think that's one thing I'm going to try to not do this weekend is not bet too much. I don't think I bet way too much this past weekend. I mean, my units were way toned down compared to Daytona.
Right.
But I do have 2 bets that I've recommended to people, and I've posted elsewhere that I've made a few sprinkles on some drivers for outrights. But overall, I'm not sure. And those aren't recommended plays. Those are I'm showing small edges. And my unit size very often is tied to my edge. So because I'm showing small edges on most of these drivers, I've made some pretty small bets. But the 2 bets I've really made were the Toyota plus 375 and then Daniel Suarez at 50-1. I definitely would have taken that myself. I was asleep or doing other things when DraftKings released lines, so I didn't see it until the morning. But PJ Walsh wrote it up and notified me, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to get that. So grabbed that as well. But those are the only 2 bets I've made as far as official bets, and then I've got a few other sprinkles that I don't think I'd necessarily recommend to the masses because I'm just showing mostly small edges there. Other than Bubba Wallace 50-1, but I don't think there's any more 50-1s available. But I do have Bubba Wallace at 3.7%. to win this weekend.
Yeah, I'll admit last week my betting process was not the best, and I know you tweeted about it because I basically tweeted out I played this like a roulette board, I covered pretty much the 3/4 of the field. And it's because I just did the math of where I was with, the 11-1 bet, having those drivers at 31 plus, and then I had 11 to 20, and then I kind of just sprinkled with the rest of the field. And I was basically just trying to lock in profit by, there's number 3. I was basically just trying to lock in profit. We'll see where we get. But so I was basically just trying to lock in profit this week because I barely played DFS. I hated the slate. I hate chalk weeks. We got that early bet with 31 plus at 11-1, and so I just ended up, I'd sprinkled across the whole field, and I understand it's not a good process, but I ended up making money because I had Kyle Busch. I hit him at 12-1 at bet 365 to start the week, and then I hit him live at 7-1 as well. So that's when he was making his way through the field. I'm like, Kyle Busch is going to win this race. So, which by the way, but we'll get to it. But we finally got our first winner, Stacking Dennys. I picked Kyle Busch last week.
You did. Nice job
for Auto Club. I finally get that win column. But
and I did tweet about that. I could have bet Logano, Blaney, Harvick, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, and I think there was probably one or two other drivers in that, I think it was Bowman. I could have bet all those guys and absolutely locked in a profit if any of those had hit. But I just wasn't quite showing enough value on them. I was maybe showing thin value on one or two, and I was showing negative EV on some of them. So I at that point, I've already got two significantly positive value bets on the 11 to 20 and the 31 plus. So if I lose, I lose. That's okay. I was all right with it because I know in the long run those will be profitable bets, and I'm not going to do a bunch of air quote hedges or whatever just to try to lock in a profitable day. I'd rather have a profitable bankroll long term than week to week. You know what I mean? So I think that's just kind of my process there. If Rowdy had exploded a tire there at the end or something, all of a sudden I'm sitting at plus 24, I guess, because I win the 2 units back that I bet. 24 units from where I am now on Chase Elliott winning. So, I like my process, even though I had a negative week. So it's all about, and you're exactly right. You admitted, I didn't necessarily love it, but I still came out profitable. And that's fine. It all depends on each person's individual risk tolerance. My risk tolerance is great. I have no problem losing 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in a row as long as I'm making plus EV bets, because when I do hit, it'll end up hitting big. And that's why when I win big, people are like, oh, you just got lucky on one big hit. I'm like, that's kind of my process. That's the whole point. I'm trying to look for plus EV. It doesn't matter if it's 5-1 or 150-1. I'm just looking for plus EV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to cap that off, not only did I have value on early week bets, but I also had a ton of free bets available. So when I'm playing with free money and I can do that, I'm probably going to do it just to lock in the profit and move on to the next week. And
there's nothing wrong with gambling with free money. There's nothing wrong with gambling with free money. Obviously, if you want to use the free money in terms of bankroll growth, you'd use it in the most plus EV ways you can. But if you want to have fun and or try to lock in a profit, or knowing, hey, it's free, it's not going to cost me any money of my own, then fine, do whatever the hell you want with it. I don't care. Do it. And that's not saying to you, that's saying to whoever. I don't care. I will gladly use a free bet on a negative EV play if I just feel like having some fun.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it was. But that's going to wrap up this week's Wine About It segment presented by Luvabella Wines. As usual, you can find them in big stores such as Kroger, Meijer, Walmart. Please try the Purple Rain. There have been nights, me and one of my friends, we like to have a wine night here and there, and there have been nights where we drink 4 bottles of that between the two of us. So
it's so good.
I love that wine. It is very
good.
You
saw me
not
polish
just
that off.
Yeah, we are not just saying
good.
We are not just saying this because they sponsor. It is a very good wine. And
yes.
Kroger, Meijer, Walmart, states all over the United States, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. You're not going to regret trying it. Make sure you do. So, Auto Club let's look at the standings after race number 2. We're 2 races in, and we have several drivers with already 2 top 10s through the first 2 races. Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, both Trackhouse cars. Alex Bowman with his new crew chief. Remember our pick earlier in the year to watch out for this year. Alex Bowman, 2 top 10s to start the year, and Joey Logano. Again, Joey Logano was so disappointing for me. He was looking so good. I wrote him up in my article for DraftKings.
Okay, real quick, I'm going to interrupt you there. I remember you either on Twitter or Facebook or something, talked about Keselowski and McDowell. And I wrote up Ross and Harrison Burton was my Paul Menard pick of the week.
Yeah.
If you had those 4, you had 4/6, 2/3 of the optimal, not the optimal, but the winning lineup on DraftKings. I don't know if it was optimal or not. I didn't run the optimizer there for what the results ended up being. But you had 4/6 of the winning lineup right there. And then the other 2 were Rowdy and Chase Elliott. Well, Chase Elliott was chalk, so obviously you should have had plenty of Chase Elliott's. And then Rowdy's Rowdy here. So, if you combine a bunch of different sources, and I know Greg Mathern tweeted it out again, thanks to me, you, and a couple other people for all your information, he ended up with a nice profitable day. If you combine all your different sources of very smart analysts for NASCAR DFS, you probably could have turned a pretty solid profit because – I recommended Ross and Harrison Burton, and both of them were 9%. And then you had Michael McDowell, which is around 9%, in that ballpark. And those 3 ended up in the optimal lineup. So I think if you combine sources, you did pretty well in DFS, hopefully. So a little interruption there, but I wanted to point that out because, you triggered me there with that.
Yeah. No, it was like I said earlier, or in my article that week or last week for Auto Club, this is the perfect week for small little pivots, and that's exactly it. So my tournament plays, I wrote up Logano, I wrote up Keselowski, and I wrote up McDowell. And I also said within Logano, I said it's between him and Blaney. By the way, hey, you got Ross Chastain also right in there. That's right below the chalk.
Yep.
It was all about the process last week because there was so much chalk, and I hate the chalk weeks, but those are the times to just do the minor pivots and yes, you just like we always say, you have to consume all the content because I overlook stuff, you overlook stuff, everybody else overlooks stuff. But if you can get a good, kind of feel on everything, that's how you're going to end up being very profitable in this NASCAR DFS world. But
can Ross I just pat myself on the back for 2 for 2 Paul Menard pick of the week in the winning lineup?
that is solid. Which also, I'm going to pat myself on the back here because as I said, I think in our season opening episode, I was going to start introducing head-to-head bets that my algorithm said was value.
Yes,
2-0 to start the year. Logano over Bell and Austin Dillon over Eric Jones. 2-0 to start the year. I love that. And one more thing, I'm remembering everything right now. Dude, our Daytona 500 episode of Stacking Dennys was the most downloaded episode ever in the history of this show. So, cheers to everybody that watches this show, listens to us every week. I cannot believe when we started this, I think we would do this podcast even if nobody listened to us. But the fact that we get people listening to us on a regular basis, I cannot express how much I am thankful for that. It is awesome to be able to do this and interact with everybody. Just sit here and talk about NASCAR, talk about betting, talk about DFS, stuff that I thoroughly enjoy in my life. Sit here and talk with Nick for a couple hours a week. It's just awesome. So thank you guys, everybody that supports this show, downloads it. It was honestly surprising. I didn't think our numbers for episode downloads were super high for the $1 Million Parlay winner when we interviewed him last year. I did not think that we were going to hit that mark, and when I checked the numbers this morning, I was like, oh, we got a new number 1 episode. So
yes,
thank you guys very much. We both appreciate it, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much, and to every one of you listening, thank you. But also, it's the best thing in the world to do this with you, Jordan, because I know you and I, we've been talking NASCAR forever. We love debating. We've debated each other to the point of not heated, but all right, we got to chill for a moment here. And that's who we are. That's what we do. So you know, I know people will call us opinionated, or we whine a lot, or we complain a lot, or whatever. Like, that's fine. Yeah. I know it. You know it. Don't care.
We are who we are.
Exactly. But we love it. We're passionate about it, and we hope that you guys appreciate that passion.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you.
Sounds
guys
like you do based off the downloads.
Exactly. You're either hate downloading us or you're actually enjoying listening to us. But
that's right.
Yes, thank you guys very much. But going back to, the point standings now, Ross Chastain, Joey Logano, Alex Bowman, Kevin Harvick, and Daniel Suarez are the top 5 in points right now. When we look at playoff points, Stenhouse and Kyle Busch tied for the lead in playoff points. Surprisingly, neither of them have stage wins. Ross Chastain now has 3 stage wins on the year.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
That's big. Because, man, I'm still in that mindset from like early last year that I don't want to think Trackhouse is that good, but they are. They are. And they are. And I haven't been a Ross Chastain fan my NASCAR analyst career. I've definitely not been a Daniel Suarez fan. But holy shit, it's just like last year. It's like they're starting off hot, and can you really count those guys out? It's impressive. But anyway, anybody else stick out to you here in the point standings? Obviously, it's only 2 races in, but you got
to go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mean, one Daytona, finished 12th at Auto Club, and Las Vegas is a really damn good track.
Really good track for him.
So Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could seriously be hanging on into the. And I understand he's already essentially locked in. Not guaranteed, of course, if we get a number of winners, but he's looking good if he keeps getting these kinds of points and has a good day at Las Vegas, which is a good track for him. If he finishes top, let's say 14, 16, half of the field, he's going to still be inside that top 10 in points probably. So, he's looking really good. And then we have to give a shout out to Corey LaJoie in 13th, right? A 16th place finish, which is actually unflattering for him at Daytona. And then a 14th place finish at Auto Club is super good result. And you were talking about Corey LaJoie kind of off the jump there. He was 16th in my flags metric out of 36 cars, which is in the top half of the field for a Spire car. Top half of the field. And you look at his teammate Ty Dillon was 34th. So first of all, we know Ty Dillon's Ty Dillon is just garbage anyway as a driver. We looked at him compared to Eric Jones. But Corey LaJoie, man, he just and again, I removed Ty Dillon after his issues. So just looking at Ty Dillon's healthy car, he was still 34th. He was behind BJ McLeod in track position, weighted, field level adjusted green flag speed. Mouthful, but you get the idea. He's somewhere in that. There was 5 really bad cars. The 3 you'd expect, the 2 Ware cars and BJ McLeod, then Ty Dillon and Chase Briscoe, which we didn't expect Briscoe, but I think that was just, there had to have been something wrong with that car, because it definitely isn't Chase Briscoe as a driver.
Yeah, that was bewildering. But still ended up in what? Where'd he end up? Like 14th,
20th,
I think? No, 20th, yeah. You're right, he was still the last car on the lead lap. Like, that's how bad that car was.
He was running just barely ahead of Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch could have passed him to finish off the lead lap, but they told Kyle Busch to back it down. You don't need to pass the 14 car on the last lap.
I think he actually did, though. If I remember right, before the checkered flag, I'm pretty sure he passed him. But we go and look at quality passes, that metric. Chase Briscoe, he had 13. Just for comparison, Stenhouse had 84. Hamlin had 79. Chase Elliott had 78. Like, that car was just not. It doesn't make sense because the rest, like, Priest had decent speed in his car. Harvick finished 5th. Like, I feel like it's one of those examples that they just completely missed the setup because high wear tracks are good for Chase Briscoe as well. So, but going back to Corey LaJoie, I mean, he had an average running position of 14.4, 11th best in the day. Like, I would love to see what that team can do if they can qualify well. Because, like, he's one of those guys that he's a great DFS play a lot of weeks because he's always super cheap, but he can get the results and fit like unless he that's where it's going to get contradictory here. I think he can like legitimately challenge for a top 15 if he qualifies well, but that doesn't make him a good DFS play. But if he qualifies mid-20s, he's a good DFS play. You know what I mean? Like, but I just like rooting for Corey LaJoie because one, he used to be a guy I always used to shit on. Like, I remember tweeting out like, when's the next caution for Corey LaJoie? And he actually responded to me once or like liked my tweet about it. But all of a sudden, like, you realize that he's doing significantly better than what he should be with that car. And everybody loves an underdog story. And that's actually like, you know, part of the reason this podcast is named Stacking Dennys is because I really like Corey LaJoie. He has a podcast named Stacking Pennies. And I used to hate Denny Hamlin. And now, you know, you throw in Denny and Stacking Dennys. But no, that was one of the I would say the underrated stories or the least talked about stories from Auto Club would be Corey LaJoie and his performance, because it's not like it's not like he lucked into that. He was legitimately running.
Oh yeah,
that good all day.
And let me jump in here on that because if we look at, so I've got 3 different flags metrics. I've got unweighted flags, weighted flags, which waits for the car count, which is very important. I don't want to get into the mathematical details, but it's a better version than regular flags. Was that 5? 4 or 5?
We're up to 5.
Depending on the wine count.
I told you, man, it's been a week.
And then track position adjusted weighted flags. So I have 3 different flags metrics, and I think all 3 serve a function. So if I look at the standard deviation of those 3, and just remove the guys that had major problems. Corey LaJoie, when you talk about how good he was, let's look at the guys with the smallest standard deviation that did not have major problems. Number 1 was BJ McLeod, but he's a shitbox, so he just always runs back there anyway. Mm-hmm. Kyle Busch was number 2 in smallest standard deviation. Kevin Harvick was number 3. Corey LaJoie was number 4. Out of 24 cars that didn't have serious issues at some point in the race, Corey LaJoie was 4th in smallest standard deviation between the 3 metrics that I have. So in other words, it didn't matter the number of cars that were on track. It didn't matter his track position. He was performing very consistently at a very consistent level on a slightly above average number. He was at, so 50% is median. He was at 55.4% for the most accurate, which is the track position adjusted. But his lowest was 55%. His highest was 55.7%. So, I mean, you know, from 55 to 55.7 as your low to high from the 3 metrics, super consistent. So Corey LaJoie definitely stood out. We got to give him a shout out. And again, he's 13th in the standings, and that's a little unflattering for how well he ran at Daytona.
Agreed. Yeah. A few other things that we learned about or we need to start learning about are the rookies and the guys that we don't have a lot of data on. You know, like I said, we had Ty Gibbs. He finished 16th after starting 23rd. There we go. We're going to hit this over. I know it. Ty Gibbs started 16th. Todd Gilliland had a great run. You know, him finishing 17th from where he usually finishes on that type of track is a great run for him. Michael McDowell, 18th. Honestly, a little bit disappointing compared to where he was last year with the high wear tracks, but still a very solid, you know, it's these underdog drivers that you really have to pay attention to. And then, you know, Noah Gragson, he's another rookie. Can we take away much, do you think, with Gibbs's performance? You could throw in Harrison Burton there too as well, sitting 15th. Can we take away much with the Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson? Because I think that's where the biggest question marks are for a lot of people this year. They don't know how to handle these two. And the head-to-head matchups for these first 2 races, it's always Ty Gibbs versus Noah Gragson. And you have no idea how to bet it. That's where I just stay away. But did we learn anything from Auto Club with these 2, you know, guys that we don't have a ton of data on outside of, you know, the lower series?
Yeah, I think Daytona's Daytona. I don't really care about that. Mm-hmm. Ty Gibbs this past weekend, his flags was right around 41%, depending on the weighted, unweighted, track position, whatever. And Noah Gragson was around 30%. So that means Ty Gibbs was better than about 41% of the field. Noah Gragson was only better than about 30% of the field. So I think that's pretty important to note. But it is only one race. But we should expect Ty Gibbs to be better. He's in Joe Gibbs equipment.
Yeah.
And we should expect Noah Gragson to be worse because he's in Legacy Motorsports, formerly Petty GM, or Legacy Motor Club, formerly Petty GMS equipment. And Eric Jones didn't have a great race. Eric Jones was, and Ty Gibbs almost had the exact same flags for each of the metrics. So we know Eric Jones last year had a really good year, and especially at Auto Club was really good. And the fact that he was right there with a rookie that's only had one top 10 in his career shows that maybe Legacy isn't quite where they were last year. I think that's pretty notable. And I wonder if it has to do with this is almost a backward ass reason, but Denny Hamlin mentioned how the RCR teams may have the best engine. Well, the enhanced partnership that Legacy has this year with Hendrick, is that a negative? I don't know. Like, it's something
it's
to
so
think
weird
about.
to say that.
It's something to think about, and this is what I talked about with Eric Jones as well. Like, he's hit or miss at these high tire wear tracks. So if I was going to play him, I was going to play his upside. Purely going to play his upside, top 3, top 5 win. I didn't want to play his safety of a top 10 because he has downside at these tracks in general. Plus, Legacy themselves are not a big money team, so they have a lot of downside. You look at Eric Jones from not last year, but 2 years ago with Legacy. He had a ton of downside. That team was terrible 2 years ago.
But Legacy still gets their engines from ECR.
Interesting. So I don't know.
Their engine supplier is ECR. I had to look it up on J-Ski, but according to J-Ski, their engine supplier is ECR engines.
Yeah. Well, then I don't know. But maybe it's just the fact that they're a small money team in general. They're one of, when we did the season preview, we talked about how like small money teams fall further and further behind as time progresses on the same kind of car.
True.
I thought maybe that would happen with Trackhouse, but there could be just enough innovation there and the right partnerships and everything that I think Justin Marks is a fucking genius. But I don't necessarily think Legacy Motor Club's owners are geniuses and have all the right people. Even though, they had a great year last year. Look at 2 years ago when they were on the last year of the new car. That team was garbage. Absolute garbage. Eric Jones struggled so bad at these kinds of tracks. And it's not his fault. He's a great driver. I think Eric Jones is a talented driver. But there was a lot of risk there with a Legacy Motor Club. So I think the nod by far has to be with Ty Gibbs right now for Rookie of the Year.
I agree with that. As much as I hate to say that, I really do not.
I hate it. But it's true.
But yeah, and you throw in Legacy Motor Club, adding the extra races with Jimmy Johnson, that just adds it spreads them a little bit thinner. It's not significantly thinner, but it does spread them a little bit thinner. That could have an effect on them. It's something to watch this year because obviously we saw last week with Eric Jones, everybody was on Eric Jones. People were betting Eric Jones left and right. So again, it's one of those things. If Legacy Motor Club does not have the speed to start the year, it could be because I think Jones was 40%.
We also shouldn't overreact, though. Let's at the same time as I say that, we also shouldn't overreact.
Yes. This is all just it's a hypothetical. You know what I mean? Like it could go either way, but we just don't have enough data to say for sure either way. So. But yeah,
if RotoDog LB gets whiny here, he's already being fussy. So I know you're always like, "Oh, Link's snoring like crazy." He's not panicking, but he's like, and he was right here next to me. I let him out there, but I've got him baby gated off from the stairs because of his neck injury, so he can't go upstairs. So we'll see how this podcast goes with RotoDog, but just wanted to throw that out there right now.
Yeah, if you're not following RotoDog on Twitter, make sure you do that.
It's
that
RotoDog
was one
with an underscore. at the end.
That was one comment we got on our YouTube of the podcast last week. Let me pull it up real quick.
Oh,
I think the biggest takeaway from this episode is we just want Nick's dog to get well.
Oh,
and yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, he's been making good progress. Obviously, he's never going to be 100%. See, this is the other thing. Like, this is a NASCAR podcast, but we're still allowed to talk about other things. He's 100%. Never going to be 100%. He has a permanent disc injury in his neck between the C2 and C3 vertebrae. Permanent. It's going to always be there. The idea is to minimize the amount of times it gets aggravated and flares up so he doesn't get that temporary paralysis. So just got to keep him as well rested as possible. But thank you for that. I appreciate that comment.
Probably not a great topic to bring up, but the cat on track from Auto Club last week, who do you think hit it? Do you think it was Ryan Blaney? Everybody's saying it was Ryan Blaney.
I have no idea. I didn't even know about it until today when I saw NASCAT in 2 or 3 consecutive tweets, and I was like, "What? Did I miss that?"
Yeah, I think. I think one account tweeted about it and then immediately deleted it because it's not something you really tweet about. And then there were pictures of them picking up the cat and a bucket. I mean,
I did not hear about this.
I mean, you have cars going 200 miles an hour. Like, we all know what happened, but yeah, so they were piecing together that Ryan Blaney hit it because there was red on his bumper, but it was probably just paint. We've seen paint like that, that just happens. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that chain reaction, well, I guess, if you really want to get super analytic, who was in front of him and who was behind him on that chain reaction sequence there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think, I think that's a pretty notable event because NASCAR is going to take these first 5 races or whatever to reevaluate the restart zone expansion, and something happened there on the restart. So, plus also, some of these new rules are already coming into play. We had the restart thing, which could have been Joey Logano just bunching up the field like that, and other drivers anticipating like they would have in the old ways from last year. But then we also had Martin Truex Jr. lose that wheel off of pit road, and now there's 2 race suspension for his crew chief and 2 crew members that have been suspended for 2 races.
Isn't it just the 2 crew members?
Oh, is it not crew chief? I was so confused by it all.
Yeah, they switched it all. I think it's just 2 crew members. Not 100% sure that. Got it. But another thing, we haven't talked about yet, we haven't even gotten to Vegas yet. This is going to be anybody that makes it through this entire episode. Congratulations.
We got good stuff for Vegas, though. I promise.
Yeah. No, NASCAR is changing the spoiler for shorter tracks and road courses, and everybody's speculating on what to expect. We don't know. Nobody can say what exactly to expect here because we have no idea. You know what I mean? We haven't seen it on track at all. We can speculate on what should happen, but we also speculated last year that the short track package should have been awesome, and it sucked. So kudos to NASCAR for making the change, trying to make a difference, but I am so fearful of this change making it even worse. And that's going to bring me to a little bit of a tangent here, but I saw a tweet that I liked earlier today. It was a random poll that showed up in my, For You part. So the last time a Cup driver led every lap was Jeff Burton at New Hampshire Motor Speedway in 2000. Will this ever happen again?
No.
And I know Ryan from iFantasy Race said he thinks it will. The closest we got was Martinsville during the car
2019.
Yeah,
the 2019
that
high downforce bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, and also the time Truex led it, 388 of the 400 laps at the 600?
Yes.
Those are a couple of the times I remember. But I'm going to say no, because you know why the Jeff Burton thing happened? Because of the restrictor plates they added at New Hampshire. That was 2001 after Adam Petty got killed at New Hampshire. Or 1 or 2, I forget. Well, it was one of those years in that time frame around where Dale Earnhardt died, Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin died. And Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin both died in testing at New Hampshire. I think both from stuck throttles, if I remember correctly. And the reaction to that was, well, let's add restrictor plates to New Hampshire, and you just couldn't pass. So Jeff Burton led the whole race on a restrictor plate race at a short flat track.
Insanity.
So, no, and I think especially with pit stops the way they are and the parity of the field now, especially compared to even, I know 2001 or 2 or 3 or whatever it was had some parity, but like there's so much more parity now. And I do not think that'll ever happen again. And I can't stress that enough.
The only way I could see it happening, I don't see it happening in any normal race. It's definitely not going to happen at Daytona or Talladega or Atlanta, the quasi super speedway. I don't see it happening in a normal 1.5-mile race, 2-mile race, Pocono, any of that. Don't see it happening at a short track. You know where I could see it happening? Now that there is no stages?
A road course. But
a road course
that goes green
the entire time.
That's not going to happen because of pit strategy.
Could it, though?
I don't think so.
If it was going to happen, I would say that I'm not saying that there's a significant chance that it will, but I think if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to be at a road course.
And speaking of stages,
and that's about the only chance.
I don't think in the stage era has there been a driver to lead outside of a road course every single lap of a stage. I don't think so.
Every single lap of a stage?
Of a stage.
I would guess
at the Martinsvilles, but yeah. You would have to have something like that. And
because I'm pretty sure Keselowski led like 80 or 489 of the 500 at Martinsville. So
yeah, no, that's fair. And I guess probably Truex potentially at Charlotte, although I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was in the stage era. Yeah, it definitely was in the stage era. Especially these days, like let's say after 2019. So let's say 2021, 22, because we all know the reaction from 2019 where high downforce just doesn't work at short tracks. It doesn't work at road courses. So from 2020 to present, I'm not sure outside of a road course if a driver has led every single lap of the stage. I would be very surprised if it's happened more than once or twice.
Yeah, I just went back and looked at those Martinsville races. They didn't lead as many as I thought. They both led 460 something, or Kes led 446 and Truex led 460 something. I thought they were in the 480s and 490s, but
yeah, no, they averaged like 450. I think it was.
Yeah, that'd be something to look up, and that's probably not an easy look up there of a driver leading every stage. But if anybody gets bored and wants to look that up and tweet us, I'll PayPal you like $5.
I'll PayPal you $10. $15
so you're gonna get
for your time.
You're gonna get a free pizza out of this.
There you go.
for finding this stuff for us. But yeah, I voted no in the poll, and 79.8% as of right now said the exact same thing. I
can't believe essentially 20% of people said yes.
Yeah, I don't see where it would happen. I really don't.
You mentioned a very specific circumstance, and even then, I don't agree. I don't. It's never happened at a road course, even ones that have gone green the whole way. Like, I don't. Even in the era of there was like 5 dominant cars and everybody else was crap, like it just doesn't happen. Yeah,
and even I would venture to say, like right now, with stage breaks, competition cautions. Even if we didn't have those right now, I don't think that it would happen. It would increase the odds significantly if we didn't have those.
What makes it
short tracks?
You know what makes it even harder is back then there was no playoffs. There was no win and get bonus points. There was no stages, which even if we eliminated the road courses, there's still the aggression factor needed to get as many stage points as possible. The aggression levels for getting as much upside as possible matters so much more these days than it did in 2001, 2, or whatever, 3, before the chase especially started. And that was part of what NASCAR wanted. That's why they designed the playoffs the way they are these days, is because they want wins to matter. They want stage points to matter. They want excitement throughout the race. So it's going to be even harder under the current rules than pre-playoffs, pre-current version of playoffs. Especially considering the last time a driver led every single lap of the race was at a restrictor plate race at a short flat track.
Yeah, chances are it's not going to happen. So just go with that. But let's get to some. We actually had quite a few good questions come in on Twitter this week. I always appreciate people that respond to that and let us know what they want us to talk about. What was funny was, I tweeted out the line for beers drank in this episode. I said 13.5. Matt H., I would have hammered the over before the news that you just had the most downloaded episode of all time recently. Now I'm doubling down on the over and parlaying it with everything. That was when I read that. Like, I audibly laughed out loud. That was awesome. A lot of I was actually surprised. Like over was like at 70%. Right now, as I'm reading it, we have 70 votes. Someone please take their vote off so we can get 69. But
I voted, so it doesn't count. So it's 69 votes right now.
69 votes, 58% on the over, 42% on the under. We're at 7 right now. We need 6 more to hit the over. I think we're going to get there, but we'll see. Let's see. Here's one. Can we fade
looking pretty good because this is almost empty.
Yeah, mine's almost there too. A couple more drinks. Can we fade Toyota earlier in the season? And who wins a race first, Ross or Suarez? What would the line be? I'm thinking Ross minus 175-ish.
Toyota, we shouldn't be fading. I mean, look what happened last year.
No.
Don't fade Toyota. That's the overreaction right there. Don't fade Toyota. I bet Toyota plus 375 for Vegas, to win Vegas. I have them right around, was it like plus 250 as fair value. So even less than that. I think technically like plus 240 or something like that. But don't fade Toyota. Please don't. JGR, they're one of the best teams over the last 2 decades, 3 decades, potentially 2.5 decades. And they're that way every year in and year out. Even when they have down moments, they win races. So don't fade JGR. I mean, last year JGR was absolute garbage at Auto Club, and guess what? They should have won Vegas the very next race. Kyle Busch was first, Martin Truex Jr. was second, blowing away the whole field, and a caution comes out with 2 laps to go. They both pit for tires, 4 tires. A couple of the Chevys pit for 2 tires, I think it was, and start up in the front row and are able to hold them off. So don't fade JGR. Don't do that. As far as Suarez versus Chastain, I don't know. Because there's not going to be a line.
It's close for you then.
No, it's not close for me. I just don't know. Because that's not something you can bet on, I just haven't thought about it.
Okay. Yeah, I was, as you were talking about the Toyota thing, I was like, I might be able to make an argument here for actually fading Toyota, but then you realize they have Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, who we both agree should have a very big year this year, would not surprise us at all for him to have a very big year. Bubba Wallace, as much as people hate him, I think he could win multiple races this year, and then of course Ty Gibbs,
he's
only going to get better.
Yeah.
Yes. So Toyota is strong. As much as those 6 drivers are so strong. So there's no way that you can fade Toyota this early in the season. And
even last year, Kurt Busch, God love him. He's going to have a couple races this year, hopefully. You get that Pastrana car, but Kurt Busch races a couple races. He won a race last year. He was super competitive in tons of races until his concussion. Hopefully he can come back and do 1 or 2 off, even if it's next year. But Toyota's strong. The 2311 guys won 2 races last year. I know both were at Kansas, but they were in several other races. So it's not just JGR. And I think as much as I think Kurt Busch is an incredible driver, it's very possible Tyler Reddick is an upgrade from an upside perspective.
Agreed.
Yeah.
100%. And like we talked about with Auto Club last week, he was disappointingly slow. But you know what? If he wouldn't have gotten caught up in that, because he was one of those that got caught up in that pileup on the restart. If he wouldn't have, he probably still would have been a top 10 car, and that's a disappointing race out of Tyler Reddick. Like, the upside with Tyler Reddick is just, it's out of this world, and if that team can actually put together cars that Bubba Wallace had at the end of the year last year, Reddick is going to be someone to be reckoned with throughout this season. But he is one of those drivers. He's so hit or miss. It's the same thing with William Byron. That was the one thing about, we talk about how much chalk happened at Auto Club between Byron back there, Chase Elliott back there, Reddick back there, Eric Jones. A ton of chalk. By the way, shout out DraftKings for not giving a flying fuck about qualifying getting rained out when everybody knew it was going to happen, and not pricing drivers accordingly. You fucking worthless pieces of shit. Anyway,
I love it.
that should have been my whine about it, but man, but no, like Tyler Reddick has. Do you think this is the year where we determine whether Tyler Reddick is the hit or miss guy or if he's legitimate? Because if he has another year where he has a ton of races disappointing, but then he has like 2 upside races and it's always he could have the upside. Is this the year where he needs to make that transition, or does he get that buffer because he is 23-11 and it's a new team, new year? We got to give him a year to settle. What do you think there with Tyler Reddick? Because
I give him a buffer. I give him the buffer.
I
I give him the buffer. I do. And that's fine. Like, we definitely disagree on that. I give him the buffer. I know obviously Kyle Larson just smashed it his first year with Hendrick, but that's going from Ganassi to Hendrick. That's an upgrade. He's going from RCR to 23-11, which isn't necessarily an upgrade because
Nick.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle Busch just went from Joe Gibbs to RCR and won his first race.
Yeah, but that's one race.
He still won it.
I
you think Reddick could have done that?
You think Reddick could have what?
Could have done the exact same thing?
Sure, absolutely.
Went to worse equipment and won it?
Yeah. Why not?
He went to better equipment and ran shittier.
But that was at a track that JGR has not been running, or Toyota has not been running very well at recently anyway.
I know, I'm just being argumentative.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we can base it all off one race. That's the whole point. No, I think we also give him a buffer. I think, look, Tyler Reddick, remember last year we talked about Tyler Reddick, like the 100th race is around the time Kyle Larson won his first race? Well, guess what? Kyle Larson won like 1 to 2 or 3 races for the next 3 or 4 years after he won his first race. Tyler Reddick is still in his like 5th full-time season or whatever it is. And now he's on a new team. Whereas Larson went to his new team after like 6 full-time seasons. So I think there's not a perfect comparison here between Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick. And I'm stalling here because I'm trying to look up their different stats. So Tyler Reddick is going into his 4th full-time season. And in his 3rd full-time season, he won 3 races. Now, Kyle Larson, in his, again, stalling because I'm trying to look things up, in his, scroll, 3rd full-time season, he won his first race, but he only won 1 race that year. And then he won 4 the next year, but then he won 0 the next year, 1 the year after that, and then he had a 4-race year because he, got suspended for the rest of the year in the COVID year. So he essentially had 6 years, 6 full-time years, plus should have had a 7th full-time year before he moved over to Hendrick. Reddick's had 3 years of full-time. And then he moved to a new team on the year Kyle Larson won 4 races with a team he has already been with for several years. So I think it's okay for Tyler Reddick at his stage in his development to have a down year. Now I get the argument. He's 27, right? So he's older than Kyle Larson at Kyle Larson's stage of year 4. But you still get a pass from me if you're only in your 4th year of Cup and it's your brand new team.
Does it make any difference for you that 2 of Reddick's wins came on road courses last year, whereas opposed to Larson never won on road courses, he won on actual tracks?
No. I think one of the things, like, look at last year. Like, Reddick would have won Auto Club if he didn't blow a tire.
Yeah,
right? Like, there was a lot of equipment failures at RCR.
Point. Yeah.
There was a lot of equipment failures last year at RCR. I remember several. I think Vegas was one of them, or Kansas. Like, Reddick blew tires in, like, 3 races that he was either leading or near the lead. I just think there were some issues, especially early in the season with RCR last year and blowing tires. It was kind of like Denny Hamlin early in the year last year, where he had every failure under the sun in some way, shape, or form. Tyler Reddick was so good last year, but his equipment didn't hold up. And that's one thing we need to actually think about with Kyle Busch. Is that equipment always going to hold up? Because Tyler Reddick had a lot of equipment failures last year.
Mm-hmm. Segueing here a little bit, because another thing that Denny Hamlin mentioned on his podcast was, I talk a lot of shit about Joe Gibbs Racing. I legitimately do not think Joe Gibbs is a good person. I think he's a terrible human being. Denny Hamlin said that if Kyle Busch wanted to still be at Joe Gibbs Racing, he would be. But he was asking such an astronomical amount of money that it would have bankrupted Joe Gibbs Racing. I do not believe that at all. Do you actually think Kyle Busch wanted out of Gibbs that bad to go to RCR, maybe to prove something? I don't see why you would make that move to go to lesser equipment. I understand, like, Denny Hamlin is giving us a lot of information. I love that he has his podcast. I love that he's, feeding us all of this information. I think people might overreact to it a little bit too much, but I fail to believe that is the reason why Kyle Busch left Joe Gibbs Racing. Like, Ty Gibbs was coming up no matter what, and they needed to make room. Easy out was Kyle Busch. Don't tell me that he was asking for so much money that I don't believe that. I don't believe that story at all.
I think Truex and Kyle Busch are both the easy outs. Honestly, actually, so I tweeted this before. I thought all 4 of JGR drivers had outs in some way. Obviously, Truex with retirement, Kyle Busch with who Kyle Busch is and everything that's happened, which is proven to be true. Denny Hamlin with his new team, maybe that just becomes a thing. And then Christopher Bell, if he did not progress the way he's progressed, like they did with Joey Logano, or Eric Jones, or Daniel Suarez, right? I thought there were outs for all 4 drivers. So the fact that Kyle Busch was really the out, I think means something, because when you're going to let go of a guaranteed first ballot, one of the all-time greats of NASCAR, that is not, I don't think, just on Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't think they wanted to let him go. I think it was a combination of both JGR and Kyle Busch. And so I would say maybe there's some truth to what Denny Hamlin's saying, but at the same time, is Kyle Busch making the astronomical amounts he was asking for at JGR? Probably not. So I think there's some truth to both sides. So I don't want to give too much credence to Denny Hamlin. It's probably what he's been told or has heard. And I believe him when that's his view of it. But you kind of just have to piece together all the sides of this, and I don't think JGR lets go of Kyle Busch if everything was hunky-dory, and I don't think everything was hunky-dory, so I don't necessarily think it was just an asking price thing.
Mm-hmm. It's probably both sides. Kyle Busch is Kyle Busch. He has he is who he is, and I don't see him being that hard-nosed with negotiations with Joe Gibbs Racing unless he knew for a fact that he had a ride that was not a Spire car for the next year. So if he knew that RCR wanted him and was going to make it happen, and they were going to actually put the resources in to give him good cars, then yes, I can somewhat believe, both sides of the story.
We also have to factor in the Kyle Busch Motorsports piece of it, and I don't know where that all comes into play. So it's a very complicated situation.
That's very true because he has a lot, and even his son with him racing.
Brexton. Yep.
If Toyota didn't support that, then if Chevy would, it's a lot of moving pieces there. But yeah, just something that I kind of picked up on was.
I will say I thought it was a very big win, not just for Kyle Busch, not just for RCR, but for NASCAR. To have one of your Ulta megastars of all time move to Richard Childress Racing, where Dale Earnhardt built his legacy, and go win his first real race. I thought that was massive for Kyle Busch, obviously. Richard Childress, obviously. But NASCAR, I think it's a big win for NASCAR. And
dude, if this starts a Kyle Busch revenge tour, we saw it happen when he broke his leg in, 2015? Came back and he won the championship that year. He was fast, dominant every week. I have always been a Kyle Busch fan. I don't try to be partial to any driver. I just for what I do for my analysis and everything, but I've always been a Kyle Busch fan. Man, I would love to see him go on a streak and just
Yeah, I think more when I say
not
more
to mention
for NASCAR,
he's a different person right now.
Oh, he totally
You know
is.
what I mean?
He's definitely
and I
happier.
love it. He's awesome.
He's happier, but he has that chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good combination. But I will say, when I say it's good for NASCAR, I don't mean necessarily that Kyle's going on a win streak. I think it's good for the attention on the sport, the storyline, the news, the eyeballs.
You always have to have the storyline. Yep.
Yeah. I think it's an incredible storyline. And especially the fact that he won.
People are going to say, ratings were down for Auto Club compared to last year. But you know what? Will that get more people talking and looking into Vegas this week? That's all that matters.
Yep.
Because there was a lot of people that were pissed off about the Daytona 500 product. And I could go on right now with how Fox broadcasted Auto Club. I am so sick of their live leaderboard not showing for 2 or 3 laps after the green flag, and also their live seconds behind the leader just being off the entire time. Fucking fix it or don't show it. You know what I mean? This is such a problem. But no, I think it's I'd love to see Kyle Busch just go out and it's very clear that he loves what he's doing right now, and that is for the competition, that is the worst Kyle Busch to have, because
chip on his shoulder. He's going back to Xfinity. I mean, that whole announcement, he's gonna have a motherfucking chip on his shoulder, and he's going to. He's ready to win. He's out of essentially a bad relationship, and when you get out of a bad relationship, that can do wonders. And we've seen it time and again when. Tony Stewart was like, I dropped some dead weight, and then he just started winning races again. It's just these things happen, and your mentality, the situation you're in, it changes it all. People work harder for each other when they're not just,
going with the flow.
Yeah. When they're not just going the flow or feeling like everything's toxic, when they're engaged, ready, let's prove ourselves, they try harder. And so there's that motivation factor. And I hate using motivation in an analysis because I'm a very mathematically oriented guy. But I don't think we can ignore every single subjective factor. So I think that's a very important point to make.
Yeah. It's it'll also be interesting to see how that affects Austin Dillon, because it should bring his level of performance up. We saw him finish top 10 at Auto Club. Auto Club is I don't understand. Like, there are certain tracks that, like, certain drivers are, like, almost guaranteed results at certain tracks. And when it comes to Auto Club, Austin Dillon finishing between 8th and 11th is almost a guarantee. He's finished in that range like 70% of his
It's so weird with him because he just avoids shit. It's like he wasn't the fastest in my flags metric. He was one position worse than Corey LaJoie. But he just finishes in the right spot every single time.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, and those are the analysis takes that you get on one side of them, like when you're talking about DFS or even betting, because he opened up at like plus 250 for a top 10 in betting markets. You're not sure what side to take because you don't want to, like, DFS wise, you don't want to go with the chalk Austin Dillon. He always finishes top 10 because for a fact that he's not legitimately finishing those. But once again, he's there. So it's just weird. And we see it several drivers throughout several tracks. There's just certain tracks that drivers are good at. And you kind of just have to, I don't know, take it all, but take it all with a grain of salt at the same time.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that he and Keselowski. So you remember the Austin Dillon Brad Keselowski incident at, I can't remember what track it was, when they finished the stage and then Keselowski accidentally wrecked Austin Dillon.
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Was it last year or 2 years ago?
2 years ago, because I was at the race.
Yeah, you were at the race. That's right. But they were coming together at the end of one of the stages at Auto Club, and people always say Michigan's the sister club track of Auto Club, and I was like, oh boy, what if we see that again? It was just, I thought it was funny how these things like repeat themselves even on different teams and stuff.
It's weird how just NASCAR has a thing for storybook endings, and they also have a thing for situations like that. I can't explain it, but it's weird. Were you going to say something?
I was going to say, Vegas?
Almost. One more thing.
Almost. All right. So we had one more question come in on Twitter, and I want to talk about this. Worst DFS bad beats. Because that is something we've kind of like hit on in the past, but it's just a question out of left field. Mine is definitely the King of the Speedway 2 years ago, when David Starr cost me fucking tens of thousands of dollars, and then once again cost me tens of thousands of dollars in the championship race at Phoenix for this caution that he brought out when I had all that money on Truex, and it just screwed over Truex. So those DFS bad beats are significantly documented in the history of stacking Dennys. David Starr owes me tens of thousands of dollars. Yes, he does.
What's your biggest bad beat DFS wise?
I don't obviously from a money perspective, it's the 2016 Daytona 500, but I don't think that's a bad beat because that's Daytona. I don't consider that a bad beat at all. I consider that just par for course. Or last year's Daytona 500 when I went from $1 million to negative 33% ROI. I don't consider that a bad beat. That's Daytona. I don't consider any of that bad beats. Whether they happened the last lap or a few laps to go for $1 million or $5,000, it doesn't matter. The bad beat I had, which you cannot and you couldn't have, and there's no way you could have predicted ahead of time, even with the weather forecast, And you talked about King of the Speedway. Well, the very first King of the Speedway was 2015, which is the first year of Fantasy NASCAR DFS. I had 2 entries out of 16 for the Fantasy Racing World Championship, King of the Speedway. It's flip-flop names throughout the years, but it's the main event for NASCAR DFS on DraftKings. And the first year, there was 16 entries, and I had 2 of the 16, I believe. Numbers might be fuzzy. I definitely had 2. I think it was out of 16 total. So the first bad beat, this is a double bad beat. The first bad beat is the live event was supposed to take place at Homestead to sweat it live and watch the race live and set your lineups live at Homestead for the finale in 2015. But that was during NFL season, and the whole Ethan Haskell, DraftKings employee, getting inside information from FanDuel thing, whatever it was, happened. And Florida just like outlawed DFS the week or two before. Not like the week or two, like maybe like 3 or 4 weeks before the finale was supposed to take place. So DraftKings, in a panic, had to move the live final from going to Homestead, and the actual DFS final would be at Homestead, to the DFS final will be at Phoenix, but you don't get to sweat it at Phoenix because we've already made plans to go to Homestead and host you all there. So we're just going to have a celebration party at Homestead after you already know the results at Phoenix. So that was bad beat number 1. We didn't actually get to sweat the live final there. The live final was for Phoenix. Bad beat number 2 was Phoenix was rain shortened. What the fuck?
Oh, I remember that year.
And
that was the only year Harvick was outside the top 10.
And
Junior won that race, didn't he?
Junior won the race. Not only that, I had Kurt Busch in one of my lineups, and he had a restart violation, which sent him to the back of the field for a restart violation. It was... So I funny thing, I finished, I think, I do not remember the exact numbers. I would go click around and look them up. I think I finished 7th and 8th, which are both top half finishes. And I think I made like $9,000 from my 2 lineups or whatever, which is great considering the amount I entered. But it didn't feel fair. And I was so I was with RotoViz then. I literally did a live stream to sweat the event. I had my co-host from On the Daily podcast back then at RotoViz, Matt Friedman, who former Action Network employee as well, former Fantasy Labs employee as well, now is with Fantasy Pros, but also former RotoViz employee. Like, he and I are really good friends. We did the RotoViz podcast for like 3 or 4 years for NASCAR. He and I were hosting a live show. We had Stevie TPFL as our guest, Steven Young, who's my co-host for Running Hot podcast now, who's with Roto Grinders and under the Better Collective umbrella. So the 3 of us were doing a live show to sweat that race, and it just gets rained out in Phoenix, in the desert, a week before it actually should have happened. That's the most ultimate bad beat. And it's not even, it doesn't even have to do with money. Like, it just was a shitty situation all around. Not only do we not get to sweat the event live in the grand finale of the whole season, Jeff Gordon's last full-time race, we have it a week before, and it gets rain short, like, so anticlimactic. I don't even care about the money part. It was just anticlimactic. And it was, but you know what? This year they'd race in the rain here at Phoenix. As long as it's damp enough.
Yeah,
not too wet, but damp. Yeah. It's like, So that was my worst DFS beat. Was just, it not even a monetary beat, just a situational beat.
Yeah. The positive note on all of our bad beat situations is we were in the position that we were. Yeah. It could have been a lot better. We're gonna sit here and complain, obviously, for shit. But at the same time,
it
both of our
balances out.
situations were
I got
great.
lucky as fuck. I will admit, I got lucky as fuck on the, I think it was the second of the 2 back-to-back clashes I won at Daytona. The first one was just really skilled, but the second one, it was Hamlin and Keselowski turn 3 and 4 at Daytona. It was just the 2 of them, and they wreck each other. And maybe one or two other cars get taken out. I forget. But essentially, I had like no Hamlin and Keselowski because they started pretty far forward. I didn't have none, but of my 150 lineups, I had very little of them.
Right.
And they take each other out because they both started kind of far forward in the field, and I win the clash. So it all balances out. As long as you make good lineups, the EV of the lineups you make over the long run balances out. So just be smart.
Yeah. It's easy to focus on those bad things, but hey,
you also have to remember the times you get fortunate for sure.
100%.
But I got fortunate on the Chris Buescher Bristol win, right? Like Harvick, if you had just taken Bell's pit strategy, would have won easily. Not Bell, Buescher, whatever. CB and
Same
CB.
thing. Yeah. But hey, we're moving on to Vegas finally. So we had two
an
races.
Hour and a half into the episode.
Yeah, no shit. There we go. We are hitting this over. So... All right. God, this is definitely an episode. I'll say that.
This is why people listen, right?
Exactly. 2 races at Las Vegas last year. First one won by Alex Bowman. I'm pretty sure I bet Bowman like 22-1 in this race because Hendrick was so strong that week.
You
And
did.
Nobody
100%
nobody was talking about Bowman. So Alex Bowman won this race. This particular race last year, it was Bowman, Larson, Chastain, Kyle Busch, William Byron as the top 5. So 4 Chevys and a Toyota. The fall race in the playoffs was Logano winning it. Ross Chastain, once again, being very strong. By the way, Chastain led 83 laps. The first race at Vegas last year, he led 68 laps.
Yep.
The second race at Las Vegas last year, Kyle Busch, Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, the top 5 in that fall Vegas race. Okay, you talked about earlier in this episode, you talked about Kansas being so similar to Vegas. You also said Texas, Auto Club. You also have Charlotte in there, Michigan. There's a ton of tracks that kind of like are quasi-similar, I'd say.
Yep.
But for the most part, it's Las Vegas, Kansas. Anything else? Like last week we were talking about Auto Club. You said last year top 10 or 10 lap average in practice correlated to actual race speed. Do we have any of those similar correlations this week? Not that we got practice last week at Auto Club. I haven't looked at the weather forecast for Vegas. I'm assuming we're good. But for all I know, it's going to be a blizzard, just because that's what happens with NASCAR. But anything particular like we saw at Auto Club last week where you said practice was so important, is that the same for Vegas this week? Or should we not value practice as much with this race coming up, the Pennzoil 400 on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, practice always matters at these kinds of tracks. It 100% matters. So hopefully we get practice in. Hopefully we get, qualifying in. And I think the things that really matter are making sure you have a well-balanced average of, what do we call it? Speed from the tracks that are similar. So you're weighing Vegas and Kansas more. You're weighing the other ones that you just mentioned a little bit less. So weighing those past results correctly, then adding in practice and qualifying because starting position does matter. And shout out to Evan Chaney, eChaney69. He also pointed out that starting position is one of the most important factors. And when I ran my model, starting position was one of the most important factors in my model as well. Now, how much of that is in correlation with practice, it remains to be seen because practice also stands out in my model. So all of those things matter a lot, but that's the good part about it is 1.5 mile tracks tend to be pretty damn predictable. So I think that's a very good thing. I love weighing, practice. I love weighing qualifying. I love weighing similar tracks in the appropriate weights. But the number one predictor is similar tracks with their appropriate weights. Don't overweigh Texas. Don't overweigh even this past week Auto Club. Don't overweigh them, but don't underweigh them either. It's not like they don't matter. So those are the things that are the most important factors for Las Vegas per my feature selection algorithm. And that's not my opinion. That's what the model selects for me based off a statistically, significant algorithm.
Mm-hmm. One thing, we always talked about with Michigan races, Ford winning. I feel like for a while there, it was also the same thing with Penske here at Las Vegas, where Pennzoil would sponsor the race, and then a Pennzoil car would end up in victory lane. You look at Keselowski and Logano both have 3 victories here. Logano actually has the best average finish of all active drivers here at Las Vegas, 8.5 over 19 races, which is very impressive. Like that is a solid average finish. He's the only one that's sub 10.1. Truex is next, 10.1. And then we have Kyle Busch, who surprisingly only has 1 victory here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Like I said earlier in this episode, his last 4 finishes here, 3rd, 4th, 3rd. Even before that, he was 6th in 2020. Like, very good at this racetrack. But, yeah, there's definitely drivers that are significantly better here than others. And, Kyle Larson's up there. It's a lot of the same people from Auto Club. And I'm a big proponent of this West Coast swing. The teams and the cars know what they have. And I don't, as I said before, I don't want to overreact, but there is a ton of correlation, and you brought it up earlier in this episode. The drivers that were fast at Auto Club are the same drivers that are probably going to be fast here at Las Vegas, and that's kind of unfortunate, I feel like.
It worked out a little different from last year, whereas, the drivers that were not fast at Auto Club were fast. But it seems to be working out more this year. And I guess the big exception again would be JGR. Truex was fast, but he had problems. Hamlin was fast. He just wasn't the fastest. And then Ty Gibbs is replacing Kyle Busch. So it's like, well, how much can we trust Ty Gibbs? Bubba is maybe an exception here where, he wasn't fast at Auto Club and he should be fast here at Las Vegas. So I think Toyota's the big key. Like that's the huge mystery for this weekend for me is how is Toyota going to be? That's why I ended up just betting the Toyotas in general because I think plus 375 where they open at Caesars, I'm happy to take them all because what happened last year is Toyota was terrible at Auto Club. A lot of it was overheating issues. And then they were really good at Las Vegas. And this year, Toyota was not the best at Auto Club, although they're still pretty good for the ones that didn't have problems. If they're even better at Las Vegas, God, they're going to be values. So, and if they're not good, then I'm okay with it because I took the Toyota camp as a whole. So I think it's just one of those things where outside of Toyota, it's hard to find overreaction spots. Like I said, maybe Byron. I already forget who else I've mentioned, but I think Byron is definitely a classic overreaction spot. So just one of those things where, unfortunately, like you mentioned, Chastain, even Suarez, like they've been good at Vegas and Kansas, and they were good at Auto Club this past weekend, and I think they made some gains there. So they could definitely be threats. But yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious how practice will go because practice does correlate. One thing I will note, the weather forecast for Las Vegas is not the weather forecast from the playoff Las Vegas race where it was hot. It was in the 80s. The forecast is in the mid-60s, and there could be some potential weather. It's not a super high chance, but we'll have to monitor and see. But, I mean, it's cold here right now.
Vegas has been getting. I was gonna say Vegas has been getting some weather here lately too. I mean, there.
It's not exactly the warmest here these days. So, tire wear shouldn't be too far different from what we saw at Auto Club, but it will definitely still be more than Texas. So that's what I'll say. Both Vegas races last year had decent fall off. The first one didn't have as much fall off as the second one, possibly due to the weather, but also just the different tire compound. Vegas number 2 had much more fall off, almost 7 miles per hour over the long
run. We talked about Martin Truex Jr. and just guys that are overall very good at this racetrack. And when you look at the stats, Truex is ridiculously good here. For only having one win, you look at his last 13 races here, he has one finish outside of the top 11, and that's his only finish. Or he has 2 finishes, 11 of the last 13 races, single-digit finishes. His other results, 11th and the 20th. He's finished in the top 10 in both stages, in all but one stage over the last 11 races. So 21 for 22 and finishing in the top 10 in stages. Martin Truex Jr. is just ridiculously good at this track, and once again goes to your point of not fading Toyotas, because a guy like Truex is so good. Not to mention, I feel like he's got a new lease on not life, but just his racing career.
Yeah. You know who had the most fastest laps at Vegas number 1 last year? Martin Truex Jr. Most fastest laps, despite not having track position for a lot of that race. His average running position was 7th, but he came through the field a couple times there because he had to go to the rear for the start of the race. So even though his qualifying position was 12th, he went to the rear for the start of the race, and his average running position was still 7th. He was flying through the field. 34 laps of fastest laps. Only 1 lap led because he never had track position. But when you're coming through traffic and you have the most fastest laps, that's incredible. Especially at a track like Vegas where you're not going on alternate pit strategies and getting a few bullshit fastest laps like you can at Auto Club, for example. While Vegas is medium-high, nice, tire wear, it's not the track where you're like pulling off strategy to just inflate your fastest lap numbers type thing. So I thought it was very notable that Martin Truex Jr. was as fast as he was in the first Vegas race last year, and it's a super good track for him. I got him 14-1 when he opened Willow Hill. Like I said, I made a few sprinkles. I was definitely showing some thin value on Martin Truex Jr. I had him about 11-1 to win instead of 14-1. So when I made my few sprinkles, which is not like stuff I'm like recommending to everybody, I definitely sprinkled Martin Truex Jr. 14-1. I posted it in the Action Network Discord. People were asking like, what are your sprinkles or whatever. There's my public bets, which I'm like, you should bet this. I'm recommending it. And there's others that I was like, well, I'm thin value. I'm going to bet it on my own. And not if you're a lower risk. I'm not going to recommend it to the public because I know the public will. Let's be real, based off the way the lines move, and I'm not trying to say this in any sort of bragging way, but after I make a public declaration, the lines very often move quickly. That's why I'm not going to sit here and make public declarations of certain bets, because I don't want everybody and their brother to bet it if they don't have the same risk tolerance that I have. Mm-hmm. But I think 14-1 for Truex is a solid value.
I wish I could have got it on that. Right now, his best odds are 12-1 sitting at DraftKings. I believe FanDuel's not updating for me, so he might be a little bit longer there. But
by the way, our weekly segment of FanDuel releasing their props has just happened. So
this is such perfect timing every time.
Out. I know, right? Like it's pretty funny, but we should probably check those out.
By the way, so last week with the 2+ stages, I know for some states they added this includes the race win. That they never added that for Ohio.
Weird.
Right before the race. I checked it the day of the race and it was not on there.
Broken right now. So they have Kyle Busch minus 700 for top 10. But look, all the negatives are like minus 105, minus 115, whatever, all the way to minus 700. But the first plus number is plus 230. And that's Bubba Wallace. Like, we have to smash all of these.
Yeah. Give me Kesel. Yeah.
We have to just smash this. Like, Oh my God. Like there's no plus money at plus 115, plus 105, plus 150. Bubba Wallace is plus 230. Plus 230. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is plus 650. This is a great track for him.
Oh my God. Come on. FanDuel, what are you doing? I mean, I love you.
I love it.
What are you doing?
But again, we're going to get, criticized because we didn't give this out while we're recording the podcast. It's just, this is our new weekly segment is like, what kind of fucked up lines is FanDuel going to give us while we're recording the podcast?
Yeah. Someone tweeted us today. I was like, do you do the podcast live? I would love to. If you can find me a platform that'll do it, I will consider it. But I have
absolutely.
Unless we're actually live streaming it, but I have to be able to record audio, video, and everything else at good quality with it, and I haven't found anything with it or that is able to do that. But Stenhouse plus 650 for a top 10. Come on, what are you doing?
I know that's insane. That's insane. There isn't like insane amounts of value out here, but Bubba plus 230 is ridiculous.
I like that.
Then it's like Eric Jones is plus 230. I'm not like super on board with that, although he did finish, or he was running ninth here when I think like he blew a tire and like wrecked on the last like stint there, which is what I think what brought out the caution with a few to go. Can't remember. Chase Briscoe is plus 230. Austin Dillon's plus 250. Keselowski's plus 300. Cindric's plus 470. Almirola's 470. Buescher 470. Ty Gibbs 470. Stenhouse 650. Good grief. This is definitely something here. But I just bet Bubba for a unit at plus 230, and I bet Stenhouse for half a unit at plus 650. And I will, God, like, it's one of those things where, like, we're trying to record the podcast, and I want to let people know these are what I'm betting, so they can get it at the lines that we want them to get it at. But at the same time, we're recording a podcast, so I can't just, like, create content. It's a very weird, and you know this yourself. There's a very weird line between being a content creator and a professional bettor, because you want to bet your own lines first. And so we do.
You always have to.
You have to. Yeah, that's
yes. You.
And then
sorry, but I'm going to bet for myself first.
Yeah, of course. And then you want to create content. So it's like, well, I want to write an article for this, so I'm not going to go tell everybody because I need to write an article for this. So not only am I betting for myself first, but I also need to have job security second, right?
Right.
And or even job security first, even, and then it's like those are the most important things. So I'll create content and then I'll release that as content because that's my job. That is literally my job. So there are times where we just get lines different from the public, and that's unfortunate, or not just from the public, from the people we give content to, and that's just unfortunate. We can't alert everybody on every platform, on every bet we make. You know what I mean? And that's just the reality of the situation. And it sucks.
Because everything moves so much.
Everything moves so much. It moves so fast. Especially because these books are so resistant to, to money coming in. But it just sucks. It is what it is. And you will always make the bet, then release the content in the way it needs to be released appropriately or best for the job you have. And then after that, it's public information. So it sucks. It's unfortunate. It is part of the gig that we do.
Speaking of, it pains me to say that I just bet this as well, but Allmendinger plus 550 for a top 10. Finished ninth here last October. He finished 14th here with JTG in 2016, 6th here in 2015. I like that plus 550. I'm on with Allmendinger and Stenhouse, plus 550, plus 650, top 10 at Vegas this weekend. But
do
yeah,
we know what engines? So hold on, what engines do the Colic guys run? Go to your J-Ski thing here.
Yeah. 1 second. They are running ECR engines.
Nice.
So, and like Allmendinger at Auto Club, he had a shine of, I don't remember how long he was up front, but he was legitimately like running top 5 at some point at Fontana last week. So yeah, these lines are definitely he finished dead last, but
Corey LaJoie is priced with shit boxes, by the way. I don't know if 15 to 1's value. I don't necessarily think so, but I just thought that was notable.
I mean, if they keep pricing him at that, I'll take it, because when Atlanta rolls around and when Talladega rolls around, if you're still pricing him like a shitbox,
yeah,
that's where we take advantage. But
yeah, this is an interesting one. Just so I was running my track quality metric or whatever for this track, and I'm just trying to figure out like who's better at this track, etc. But then I just come to realize it's like the track quality has changed so much from car to car, year to year, that I'm not really worried about, and it ends up not being statistically significant when I throw track quality into my model. So I don't really give too much of a crap about it, but I don't think it's completely insignificant in somebody like AJ Allmendinger's case, where there's a very small sample size of relevant data, let's say, because he's mostly been in the Xfinity Series or not racing in the Cup Series. And then when he was with JTG. So I think that matters, but it's tough. I love how it goes from Daniel Suarez minus 105 for a top 10 to the next cheapest driver, I guess you'll say, or next favorite driver for top 10, to Bubba Wallace
plus
at plus 230. Like what the hell is that?
A gap. That's
a massive gap. That goes from better than 50% to worse than 33%. Off of quick math in my head, because 2 to 1 is 33%. That makes no sense why there's such a monstrous gap there. And why the fuck is Kyle Busch minus 700?
Minus 700. They are overreacting to him winning last week. I'm telling you.
Do we see this with... I'm looking at top threes, and we don't see this with top threes. Daniel Suarez is 9 and Bubba's 10 in top threes, which makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. 9 to 10 as your one to the next. But for some reason in top 10s, they're a monstrous gap, and I don't understand it. It makes zero sense. By the way, some very interesting values in those top threes as well. Austin Cindric is 22. Well, all those plus 470 guys are 22. Austin Dillon 16 to 1 for a top 3.
Allmendinger and Stenhouse are at 31 to 1.
Yeah.
McDowell is priced the same as McLeod and Ware.
Yeah. I don't know what FanDuel's doing here. I don't think necessarily those are values just because of the way Vegas is very much a favorite track, but Daniel Suarez 9 to 1 for a top 3.
I like it.
I do too.
I don't want to like it, but I do. No.
I don't want to like it. That's the thing. But I do.
So last week when my friends asked me, he goes, how much time do you spend, this segues off of what we're doing right now. He's like, how much time do you spend looking at sports books when they drop lines and anticipating them? And I'm like, buddy, you don't want to know my screen time.
No,
when
you
it comes
don't.
to
You definitely
these
don't.
books, because and I don't want to admit it, but at the same time, that's oftentimes where you get value, and that's
what we
it's the
do.
name of the game. Like, it's what happens. Like, it's very clear that these sportsbooks don't really know what they're doing, and they haven't learned a damn thing from last year. So if you're able to take advantage of that, you have to.
How about this?
So
FanDuel group betting number 3. Alex Bowman plus 390.
against
Bell, Truex, and Reddick. While I like the Toyotas, Bowman plus 390 against that group is a little crazy.
And if Chevy has like I said, go back to Auto Club last week, Chevy for the top 5.
It essentially becomes like, what if Toyota just underperforms at all? Then Alex Bowman's a monstrous value. Like, this is almost like a correlated play where if like Toyota just sucks, then Alex Bowman is even better value. Now, I think he's value regardless of whether I think Toyota's better or worse. I think Alex Bowman's value at plus 390. I can't run my model because I have my model run, but I have to manually enter the groups and then rerun it, you know. But just off intuition, Alex Bowman plus 390 is insane. Bowman plus 390 in Group 3 is sick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make that. I'm making that an official bet. That is a 1-unit bet from me. Alex Bowman Group 3 plus 390.
I love how earlier in this episode you were like, I regret at Auto Club probably over betting and putting too much out there, and now
God damn it. Well, it's because FanDuel, let's be real about those top 10s on FanDuel. Those are stupid. Not the top, I haven't made any top 3s or whatever, but like the top 10s are dumb. How do you go from minus 105 to plus 230 from one car to the next? That doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense. So,
I mean, you're too top heavy on guys like Kyle Busch, putting them at minus 700. I mean, those are like Caesar's lines right there.
Right, exactly. But then they gave us the back half of the field at like crazy odds, which is nice. So okay, so I bet Alex Bowman plus 390 in Group 3, just so you know, transparency. I have Bo Wallace plus 230 for a unit. And I have Stenhouse plus 650 for half a unit and Allmendinger plus 550 for half a unit. Those are my bets that I've made right here live on Stacking Dennys. Once again, and this might just end up being a freaking weekly segment because this is ridiculous. Like, if FanDuel is just going to throw us these bones, how can this not be a live weekly segment? We got to find a way, dude, to just stream this podcast live at this point.
Yeah.
The person that had that question, I think, is a really good question.
I don't care if there's. I mean, we can figure out a way. Like, I know how to live stream. We can figure out a way, but it's just getting everything else. And here we go. We're gonna hit this over, man. There we go.
The beer is like. Here, let me turn this microphone. If you're watching visually, the beer spray got on the microphone.
That's 13. Right there. Line was at 13.5 tonight. And
we just hit the over. There. Yeah, I feel bad because,
not yet.
People follow us for getting these lines, but there's nothing we can do when we're literally in the middle of a show.
Yeah, it's midnight Eastern time.
Yeah, midnight Eastern when FanDuel releases.
Oh, we did hit the over. I thought it was 13.5. It was 12.5. We did just hit the over.
Well, we're going to hit it anyway. Because this will probably be one of our longest episodes of all time. And I'm okay with that. It's a random-ass race.
14.
But it's the start of a new season. We've had a lot to talk about. And, I mean, you and we could go all day on just talking NASCAR.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny because, our episodes will vary from, an hour and a half to over 2 hours. And people don't know what they're getting themselves into. So I agree with that person who asked, can you stream it live? or can you put timestamps? They may have been different people. I don't know. But I think all that stuff is good stuff.
Yeah.
And
I used to do the timestamp thing. I just get lazy. I'm just going to post it.
More time-consuming stuff to do. I agree.
Yeah. If I have open time, then yeah, I'll throw timestamps on there. But most of the time, I'm just like, I'm getting it up.
This is so annoying because now it's like, okay, I go from, all right, I'm going to try to be conservative this week, and then FanDuel just drops these like, what the fucks?
So that is the awesome part about sports betting, just in general, and especially NASCAR betting, because there's so much value with these sports books and how they don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's awesome, but at the same time, it's frustrating because a lot of these bets, like we're sitting here betting Stenhouse for a top 10. We're sitting here betting Allmendinger for a top 10. Do I expect any of these bets to hit? Absolutely not. I don't expect Stenhouse to finish top 10. I don't expect Allmendinger to finish top 10. But the odds that you get them at is the difference. Like, this isn't like other sports where you're betting minus 110 on either side and you're just hoping to cover a spread. This is like you're getting like plus 650. That's the same odds this week as the favorites. It's the same odds as Kyle Busch to win the race, as Kyle Larson to win the race, and you just need A.J. Allmendinger or Stenhouse to finish top 10. And that's just it goes back to people not understanding NASCAR betting. And I think that's I don't want to say the hindrance to NASCAR betting becoming bigger than it is now, but it's definitely has an effect on it because of you're going to lose a lot more than you're going to win. But the odds are just so much longer, and people don't understand that because, like, my big philosophy in life and everything, like business and everything, is make it as simple as possible for people. And NASCAR betting is not simple for people. To be honest with you, it's not. You need to have a brain. You need to understand how this all works. You need to understand that you're going to go through, weeks of shit. But when you actually do hit and you hit a hot streak, it's going to be big. But yeah, that's how it is with NASCAR betting, and I think that's what makes the NASCAR betting community that much better, is because the people that are thoroughly in it and they are solidified in it, they understand that is how it works, and that's why it's just so awesome. Like, how many people hit Eric Jones 60-1 or longer at Darlington last year? That was fucking awesome. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of those positions or situations where it's just awesome.
It's what you and I talk about, though, and we've talked about this since we've started Stacking Dennys. We both hit our hot streaks typically in the middle of the year because the beginning of the year has a lot of unknowns, so it's very hard to be like, well, I know which manufacturer, which driver, which team is going to be better at which track, under which conditions, under which rule changes. It's very hard. But when you get that 5, 6, 10, 12 races of data, boom, rocket ship.
Yep.
And it happens year in and year out for the people that do this all the time. So while I believe I have an edge and while I believe I make good bets at the start of the year, very often I'm down at the start of the year, but only because, it's very hard to predict start of the year. So the edges we think are bigger at the start of the year may not actually be bigger. And I will say last week I thought my edge was really big, getting 11-1 on 31 plus. I think that's just a monstrous edge, and I will never ever feel bad about that.
I'd bet that a million times
out of a million times. Yeah.
Not to mention,
absolutely.
Caesar's opened at 150-1
for like 5 seconds. Yeah, but if you got that, then
yeah,
this is the greatest bet of all time. If you got it,
great bet. But they probably cleaned up a good amount on that. I'd imagine.
That's fine, because in the long run, they'll lose an insane amount on that.
Yes, please do that again.
Yeah, do it again, Caesars. I'd love it. Anytime there's rain in the forecast, just open up 31 plus at a gazillion to 1 or whatever, especially after a super speedway race. But you get the point. It's like the people that are very, very, very good, very, very, very sharp, very, very much pay attention, all of us, and I don't care if it's me or you or anybody else we recommend on the last show or I forgot to recommend on the last show, we all clean up in the middle of the year. And the worst part is the beginning, because there's a lot of unknowns, and the end when finally all the long shots have won or performed in some way, and that value is gone on all the long shots at that point. And then it's like playoff time, and there's a lot of just scheming going on in the very end of the playoffs, so it becomes a lot harder. But from like race 10, 12 until the first couple races of the playoffs has always been our bread and butter, both yours and mine, in the betting world. I don't know about necessarily DFS for you or me, but I know for me, it's just in terms of betting, I just take off in the middle of the year.
Yeah, it's kind of full spectrum for me. Like DFS, I definitely get hot during that time of year, but betting wise, it's significantly better. But going back to Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we went on quite a bit of tangent there. Not that I'm mad about it, but
because we didn't do that for Daytona.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of guy? Okay, so here's a question for you: What drivers do you think are or could be overrated going into this weekend's race?
Wow, this is a tough one, because I think based off of the way things are, I feel like underrated drivers performed well at Auto Club, so they're no longer underrated. And I feel like it goes basically to the overreaction thing. And I feel like overrated drivers actually underperformed. Vegas overrated or Vegas underrated actually performed opposite at Auto Club. So I feel like there's a lot of pretty decent sentiment, and I think that's why my model is not showing a ton of value anywhere. Because I think even the books are reacting similarly to overrating, underrating, but which is, I don't know. I honestly, I feel like this is a race where mostly I want to avoid, just in general. Like, I'm not a big fan. I've made 2 official bets, like I said. I made some smaller bets because I like gambling, and I showed some small value on a few drivers. But this isn't a race I'm trying to go big on until apparently FanDuel drops live top 10s and live groups and really fucks them up. So I don't have anyone. I'm sorry. I just don't. Do you?
I don't like. Part of me wants to say like Chase Elliott, like you mentioned him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about him. Definitely, I would agree with that.
But like you also look at Chase Elliott and you look at his stage finishes over the last 11 races. He's only finished outside the top 10 in stages in 1, 2, 3, 4 of the last 22 stages.
Wow.
So he while he does have, he only has 1, 2, 3, 4 top 10s in his last 10 actual races here. It's clear that he's still pretty goddamn solid with the stage finish. Like, it is so, he's just not finishing races, and you can't, it's one of those things you can't count against him, really, because he was so good. Like, he has multiple stage wins. He has 3 stage wins over the last 6 races here. Like, it's not like Chase Elliott is bad at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He's just not getting the results. So that is one thing to keep an eye on, I would say, this weekend.
Dude, I feel like we have to at least do the people that are up a service and be like, FanDuel dropped live lines while we're recording Stacking Dennys. So I just tweeted that out. I didn't tweet any of our bets or whatever. I'm happy to. I just feel like we got to do, like, it sucks, man. It's one of those situations where, like, FanDuel drops live lines while recording Stacking Dennys, and you have the whole feeling of, like, well, I want to bet it, I want to tell everybody, but I want to save it for content, and the people want to know. But then half of them are asleep because it's after midnight on the East Coast, which is what, happened to me yesterday with DraftKings and Daniel Suarez or whoever it was, Bubba Wallace being 50-1. No, Suarez, 50-1. So all I tweeted was, oops, we did it again. FanDuel drops live lines while recording Stacking Dennys.
I'm going to go ahead and quote retweet you right now and say I just hit Allmendinger plus 550 and Stenhouse plus 650 for top tens.
And I will just quote tweet it. Like, and this is the problem with a podcast is, like, while we're doing this, if people are just listening on audio, this sucks for content. But we just made some bets, and I feel like we should let our people know. It
sucks, but at the same time, I don't feel that it's very much different than if it was a Wednesday afternoon and FanDuel dropped the lines then.
Yeah. So, right, I have 1 unit on Bubba, plus 230 top 10. Dinger top 10, half a unit. Stenhouse, half a unit top 10. And 1 unit on Bowman, plus 390. 1 unit.
In the group. Yep.
Exactly. I'll say, we'll track later. I'm literally recording a podcast right the fuck now. All right. It's tweeted. But at some point, the show goes on and we have to actually record our podcast.
Yeah. So, moving further on, Random Fantasy Racing, your doc blocked was more prominent than ever last week.
How is this happening? Dude, I go from not even qualifying for the race to a good driver being a shitbox.
Chase Briscoe, which, he finished 20th, which is significantly better than where he should have been.
No, he was literally a shitbox on speed.
Oh, man. But doc block full in effect. Who do you have as your Random Fantasy Racing driver for Las Vegas Motor Speedway? Who are we avoiding this week? Because your first 2 picks for official races this year, well, actually your first 3 picks, Cody Ware, Chandler Smith, who did not make the race for the Daytona 500, and then Chase Briscoe, who was slower than the shitboxes. Who's your Random Fantasy Racing driver for this week? While I find your tweet, so I can give you.
I've got it here. Is there a way to drop it? So you and I started on a new platform, so I don't know if there's a chat feature in our Oh, there it is. Let me drop it in here. There's my random fantasy pick, so you can.
There we go.
Get my influencer standing point thing. But my random fantasy pick for Las Vegas Motor Speedway is Michael McDowell is dock blocked. So Michael McDowell will probably be running Cody Ware lap times this week if things just go, according to schedule. I don't even know how to call it. But Michael McDowell is dock blocked for Las Vegas. So another reason to avoid his top 10 bet on FanDuel. So I tweeted out, you tweeted out, I tweeted out the bets we made. And lines haven't moved yet because there's only 98 views on my tweet, and going to your tweet, Fan Racing Online, is 3 views on your. No, that was a Steve Liffender. 148 views. So you actually have more views than mine, but yeah, it's after midnight on the East Coast, so I don't think we're getting a ton of views right now on our bets, which is why I think the lines are not immediately moving.
You know what's awesome is random fantasy racing. I got McDowell's teammate, Gilligang, Todd Gillen.
Oh no!
I had Harvick last week, so he gave me a top 5. I don't think Gillen's gonna give me that same one this week.
I need to figure out if on these standings, so I'm just disqualified from the Racing Underdogs Cup. Yeah, I'm disqualified.
Never responded?
Yeah, I'm just disqualified because you're supposed to start every race for the Racing Underdogs Cup. And because I got Chandler Smith who didn't start the race, I don't even count as an underdog, which I think is bullshit because my pick didn't start the race. It's not like I didn't make a pick. I made a pick and he didn't start the race.
Yeah.
I literally should be the most ultimate underdog. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Who's your pick to win? By the way, through the first 2 races of the year, you're 2 for 2 in selecting the 34th place finishers. So
who
you had Byron,
and I have the number 34 car this week.
Yeah, you had Byron for Daytona, and you had Reddick for Auto Club. Both finished 34th. So, who is finishing 34th this weekend?
Ross Chastain,
at Las Vegas. Ross Chastain. You're going Chastain.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, look at him. Last 2 Vegas races, plus the Kansas races, plus what he did at Auto Club last week on this tire combination, plus what he should have done at Auto Club last year when he spun out, moving from the back to the front, and spun out in 6th place while he was driving through the field. I look at the RCR cars, the engine from what Denny Hill. I don't know. I'm just gonna go with Ross Chastain at. I don't give a shit for what his odds are. He's my pick to win. I don't necessarily think he's a good bet based off the odds that you can get him at, but he's my pick to win.
I like it. I like that mindset. I'm by the way, I'm coming off a win. Gotta throw that back out there. Coming off a win at Auto Club with Kyle Busch. I'm going to go with Kyle. I'm going to go with the other Kyle. I'm going to go with Kyle Larson.
Nice.
Kyle Larson.
He was close last year. He and Bowman had that restart.
He has 5 top 3 finishes in 13 Las Vegas races. I'll take that. I think Kyle and Kyle go back to back here, and we get 3 different winners to start the season. So I'm going to go to Kyle Larson, and I'm happy with that.
I'm going to go over by 1 more.
Yes. That's 15. Man, I'm going to have to... My lines are low. This book's getting hammered. Actually, yeah, because, well, I had over 12.5 at minus 115. So that's all right.
Oh man. Why does this keep happening to us where we record Stacking Dennys and there's a line posted on FanDuel that's just egregious? Like, how can you go from minus 105 to plus 230?
I don't hate it, though.
Oh, I love it for us. I just think that's egregious. Like, how can you go from minus 105 on Daniel Suarez to plus 230 on Bubba Wallace? Yet in the top 3 market, they're essentially the same price.
By the way, Kyle Larson plus 112 over Kyle Busch. I haven't ran any numbers, but anytime there's a head-to-head that's plus value or plus money, I like it.
Yeah, no, I do
depending
too.
on who it is.
I think the issue is Tyler Reddick ran really well at these same tire combo tracks last year for RCR. And knowing how well RCR did back-to-back years at Auto Club, it's like, okay. So we look at the last four races, or the four races on the same right and left side tire combinations. The four races that there have been, period, on this tire combination, which are Kansas last year, Texas last year, Vegas last year, both number 2 for Kansas and Vegas, and then the one Texas race, not counting All-Star race. And then Auto Club this year, those four races, Reddick was third in lap lead percent, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth in average running position, but second in average finish, second in driver rating, and first in fast lap percentage, averaging those four races, and removing incidents on each driver in case they had some major incidences. So now that's Kyle Busch's car. So I can't really necessarily get on board with fading him. When Larson wasn't in the top 10 on any of those metrics. Oh, sorry, I take that back. Larson was 7th in average running position, 9th in average finish, 8th in driver rating, and 9th in fast lap percentage. So hard for me to take Larson even at plus money there, knowing what happened with those cars on those same tire combination. Now, again, that's a 4-race average when I don't necessarily think we should be averaging them all the same, but it was the quick math I could do before the show, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
just with a grain of salt, I think if I have a chance to to weigh them as much as I think they should be weighed based off my sim scores, that could change, but it's not an insta bet for me at plus 112 on Kyle Larson versus Kyle Busch.
Yeah. It's always noteworthy when a head-to-head Larson is plus money. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree
something
with
to
that.
point out.
I mean, he's Kyle fucking Larson.
Yeah. Especially the speed that he showed at Auto Club last week after his issues. Like, it's... And that could be another thing where people overreact to it. You know what I mean? Like, it could even be both ways. But
I'm typing again because this is just. We need to just live stream our show or something.
We'll figure out a way.
It's going to be like must see TV essentially at this point. Like, if you're a NASCAR bettor, a serious NASCAR bettor, you got to stay up past midnight Eastern. Because that's when FanDuel's... 3 weeks in a row, FanDuel has dropped their odds while we've been recording.
Yep.
3 weeks in a row. I mean, it's a pattern now. It's a trend. Trend, as Larry Mack would say.
Trends. We got that trends.
The trends. So, what else are you going to do? Like, it's trend. It's must-see TV. I don't know.
All right.
But yeah, we've talked enough, we've recorded enough, we've drank enough.
We have, yes. We've hit the over. And hey, good luck to you guys betting Las Vegas. DFS wise. We'll see how this weekend goes.
Thank you to Luvabella Wineries for sponsoring the podcast. Purple Rain is a really fucking good wine.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, it's good.
I am intrigued to see your review for the rest of the wines, because I know you're a big wine guy. I'm not.
Oh, I love wine.
But yeah, I remember like the first time I drank those wines, I was like, I hate wine, but this is good.
It's funny because I love wine, and this is not normally the kind of wine I would be like, try and get in the camera. I would be like crazy about, but for the style of wine, like adjusting for the style of wine, this is like 2 or 3 standard deviations above what I would prefer from this style of wine, right? Like I like dry wine, so having a sweet wine for me, like I'm mathematically adjusting my wines. I was gonna
say you would throw the mathematical shit in, like standard deviations when you're talking about wines, like.
But it's like it's good and it's drinkable, and I am not a guy that will have semi-sweet or sweet. And I wouldn't say this is sweet. I would say this is like slightly sweet wines. It's just not my typical preference. But the Purple Rain I could drink all day, and I would drink, like you said, you and your buddies can get together. You can drink like 6 bottles of it. I drink a bottle myself easily.
Yeah.
On a cold day, on a hot day, doesn't matter. So thank you, RotoBaller Wineries, for sponsoring the show once again.
Yes, 100%. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you next week. We're going to talk about Phoenix next week. That's going to be something.
Oh, baby.
Because I'm not good at Phoenix. But you are. And it's one of the most predictable tracks, but we'll get there.
I don't think it's... Well, given the rule changes, I don't think it's going to be the easiest thing to predict. Let's say that.
That's true. Yes. It was predictable pre-2022. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yes. So, thank you all for listening. Talk to you next week. Hopefully you stayed, if you stayed along for this long.
If you did, yeah.
Please
get help.
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? There's no reason you should still be here. But
you wasted 150 minutes of your life, unless you're actually using this information or just really enjoying the entertainment.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys. We'll see you next week. All right.
Peace.
See you.